What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. How was everyone's weekend? A lot of thinking, I'm sure, after some of the stuff that took place on Twitter, and everybody's hoping rescheduling, please, happen soon. Do you believe it's going to happen? I'd love to get your feedback. I see some comments coming in. Should be an interesting week, as today's title is a big week for cannabis. Hopefully that is indeed the case. But again, welcome you into Traded Black Podcast presented by Flowhub. I am your host, Shad Dales. AV is back from Argentina. I didn't realize this, but it's 9 hours to fly from Fort Lauderdale to Buenos Aires. But it looks like he had a good weekend. He's back here on the show. Anthony Coniglio coming on in just a moment to talk about their latest print, as well as Michael Bronstein, get his take from last week's hearings involving the Farm Bill and the hemp ban delay. Got zero attention. So that makes basically sounds like all signs point to the hemp ban is going to indeed take place later this year, and some new rules about hemp coming out of the state of Texas. We'll get Michael's take on that a little bit later. So with that, let's welcome in AV on a Monday. Good to see you. How was
your birthday?
What?
Today's your birthday?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Happy birthday,
Good.
Shad.
Yeah.
Rose, where's that coming from? Tara, thank you so much for the super chat. What is going on?
It's not Shad's birthday.
Happy birthday, Shad. Cole Memo. Happy birthday. I it's not my birthday,
fake
guy.
News. We're claiming fake news.
Oh.
World War III also is over, apparently. Donald Trump has claimed that the
US
war is pretty much over, which I think is insane. Because
he realizes, like, what's at stake here. Like, there is a huge mess, and you thought the Iraq War, Middle East War, what was that? 15, 20 years?
Well, I mean, 2 weeks later, Cole Memo just did a big fake news. 2 weeks later, you can't just say, all right, guys, like, we kind of bombed everything. It's over. We're putting the guy that we killed son and killed his entire family into the he's going to run the country and everything's going to be gravy. I just don't really see that happening.
Speaking of over, is it over between Dak Prescott and his soon-to-be wife? She didn't sign a prenup, and
Trump is definitely spoofing the tape time, and that is true. He saw energy rally above, I think it was like $114 a barrel. It opened last night, and that is no bueno for the U.S. economy if that stays put.
What's it priced at right now?
It's under 90. It's
down to 90.
Oil's trading like a meme coin.
Yeah, no kidding. Crazy. But yeah, I saw it over.
None of this affects cannabis, which is the great part.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. You know what? Let's get into it. I know there was a lot of stuff. We're going to bring in Anthony Coniglio on just a moment, but Doug Kass took to Twitter on Friday, basically said that a rescheduling announcement is imminently. Never heard of that word before in the industry, but I have to admit, I read this and he's getting a lot of flack online because a lot of people are thinking that, just toying with the markets again. I don't think that's the truth at all whatsoever. We even get some flack too. But the reality is just, I wish people would just calm down, especially on Twitter. And like, we're not here to pump anything up. We're basically trying to be a media company through the contacts to find out what we're seeing and hearing. And I do believe that something is going to get announced here relatively soon. But did you get a chance to review some of it? I think you did. I think you commented a couple things. What was your thoughts?
It is what it is. I mean, people need to take the emotion out of the market. I mean, if you don't like what I have to say and you don't like what Doug has to say, block us, unfollow us, or do whatever else makes you happy. But the fact that Doug is putting out these tweets paired with emails that says he continues to buy,
right?
I mean,
put your money where your mouth is.
If Doug put that out on Doug's FINRA and SEC regulated, for God's sakes, he runs a formal fund.
Yeah.
Doug cannot be openly. You think Doug is dumb enough to manipulate markets on Twitter to make a couple bucks off some retail investors and some volatility in MSOS and MSOX? I mean,
there's your shorts right there. Guap, if you're listening, cut that piece right there.
I mean, it's just stupid takes. Like I've done mildly well in my career. I mean, I'm not sitting here trying to manipulate the MSOS market to make a couple bucks. I don't give a shit about that. Neither does Doug. I mean, Doug's saying things that are uninformed opinions, and if you don't like it and it happens to move the market, look away or do whatever you need to do. People say that, maybe we should fade Doug because every time Doug tweets, the market goes down. Okay, if you're paying that close attention and this means that much to you,
Yeah.
Every time Doug says something, short the market, and you'll be making more money than you are holding your bags for cannabis stocks. It's just it's ridiculous. It's very few and far between people on Twitter that are like getting up in arms about it, but they just keep going on and on and on. It's like, go do something else with your sad little existence other than try to just say nonsense on Twitter. And as you can tell, I'm kind of just sick of it.
Yeah, I hear you. No disrespect to people out there, but I think that you hit is like basically everything you talked about being FINRA, and I don't think he's trying to, short a stock or pump up a stock for a few bucks on Twitter. That's ridiculous, but keep things into perspective. Today's podcast, as usual, is presented by our good friends over at Flowhub. If you're serious cannabis operator, you already know margins are tight, compliance is complex, execution, it definitely matters. That's exactly why so many leading dispensaries across the country are relying on Flowhub. If you aren't, pay attention. They give you real-time inventory visibility, built-in compliance reporting, integrated payments, and powerful analytics, all in one streamlined platform. There's no patchwork systems, no manual workarounds. So whether you're scaling from one location to 5 or managing a multi-state footprint, Flowhub helps you move faster, stay compliant, and protect your bottom line. If you're ready to operate smaller and smarter, not smaller, but smarter, and build a more efficient retail operation, you can learn more by booking a demo at flowhub.com. All right, let's get into our first segment here today. We had a lot of earnings last week, a lot of big companies, and one of them was NewLake Capital Partners. And with that, let's welcome back to the live stream our good friend Anthony Coniglio. How was the weekend, my friend?
Oh, it was great. How are you guys doing?
Good. How'd you like that opening take?
That was
I
good.
saw you smile in the background. I'm like, probably should bring him in for some of this conversation, but I don't know how often you get to Twitter, but yeah, we saw a lot of lighting up, and the market did rally based off that tweet in the last 90 minutes, 2 hours. But your take on what's going on right now on Twitter, or do you pay attention much to it?
No, I do, and I used to be more active. I just don't have a ton to say, so I've not been engaging a lot lately. But I do certainly watch it. I think people are starved for information, right? We've got
Completely.
we go from these announcements, and we had the EO, and everybody's just starved for information on timing. And I think someone like Doug Kass is viewed as someone who has access to information, and so his commentary is going to, whether right or wrong, his commentary will carry some weight. And so
For
when
sure.
he says it's supposed to happen within the next couple of days or shortly, however he phrased it, I think it got people excited, and that certainly was translated into moves in the market. And then when it doesn't materialize on the time frame people make up in their head, or on the time frame somebody projects it will happen, then people get mad.
Oh, they're mad this afternoon. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I saw it online this morning. Everybody was hoping we'd get something over the weekend or first thing this morning. But again, yeah, that, and I've learned that lesson. If you're off by even 2 days, they're pissed off at you. But, look at the big picture. And I know you don't have a lot to say on Twitter. You did have a lot to say, though, in your latest reportings. You reported 12.3 million in revenue for the quarter and just over 51 million for the full year, which shows some steady performance despite, everything that's happened in the space right now. What were the, I guess, key metrics, key drivers in your latest print, you think, Anthony?
Our key driver that we always focus on with investors is AFFO, available funds from operation, which is the measure of our free cash flow in our business. And our quarter came in as expected at 51 cents a share of AFFO for the quarter, and our dividend was 43 cents a share. So an 85% payout ratio, and that ratio is what percentage of your free cash flow is necessary to cover your dividend. And so it's nice in an industry like this. We're one of the few, if not the only, that had revenue and AFFO up year over year, 24 to 25. I think that's the quality of the portfolio, but we're not perfect. We've talked in previous episodes about defaults in the portfolio and vacancies, and we're working hard to re-tenant properties. But 25 was a good year relative to the industry and relative to 24. We've got some headwinds continuing in this industry. We have a couple of vacancies we're working hard to re-tenant. And, we've guided to everybody that our first quarter numbers will be down a little bit, given some of those vacancies that took hold second half of last year and depleted security deposits. But this is about not being perfect. This is, listen, when you're taking the type of risk that we take, you sign a lease for 15 to 20 years in the cannabis sector, you're bound to have vacancies. And so it's about tapping into those relationships and re-tenanting those as fast as possible.
Anthony, when you look at those vacancies, I mean, some of these properties are purpose built. Obviously, retail can be retrofitted for other uses, but within the portfolio, when you do have a vacancy occur, is it imperative that a cannabis operator gets put back into there, or can you use it for other things to stabilize it and not keep carrying it?
Not imperative and not imperative at all, but it is the best use for that property, particularly the industrial buildings. And in our portfolio, 34 properties across 12 states, we have 15 of those are purpose-built cultivation facilities, and the balance, the 19, are dispensaries. So dispensaries are easier to flip into non-cannabis use. Obviously, the cultivation facilities, given the scale of the build-out, its best use is cannabis. And for the 3 properties we have in inventory, there's interest across all 3. We'll see if that translates into leases at any time in the near future.
And how are you feeling about the overall industry from like a sentiment check? Do you believe that we've seen, obviously with Air Wellness last year, we've seen there's another major company in forbearance. We've seen the PharmaCann and a bunch of other things play out. Do you think we're kind of starting to smooth out in terms of volatility within the operators and starting to see stability in the names that are going to carry the industry forward?
Yes, from the macro, no, from the absolute. And what I mean is, go in reverse. I think we'll continue to see a couple of companies that just don't have the runway to get to the other side of rescheduling, get to the other side of additional capital coming in, get to the other side of recapping the balance sheet. But by and large, your original question around sentiment, I think people have this cautious optimism. People are feeling excited about what the future could hold.
Yep.
But anxiously awaiting this rescheduling. People want to actually see it. They want to see the final rule, especially given the shenanigans. Yes, I use the word shenanigans. Given the shenanigans that the DEA pulled that were unveiled through some of the respondents in the hearing, in the DEA hearing, the administrative hearing. So, we'll all feel better once we see the final rule filed. We all know that there will be legal challenges, but getting it final rule is a massive step.
Yep.
When I look at, we talked about 51 cents per share, your AFFO. For anybody that I think, yes, a lot of people that do follow your story that listen to this live stream, but for anybody that's new, why does that number really tell the story? Refresh them or remind them.
Yeah, so what I would tell them is we're a real estate investment trust, or REIT. Our business is to acquire properties from and for cannabis operators and lease them back on a long-term basis, providing non-dilutive capital to the industry. We've been at it for 7 years, and our business is to collect rent and pay out, through the REIT rules, pay out 90% of our net income. Net income is different than free cash flow because you could deduct the depreciation. Let's pay out 90% of our net income as a dividend. And so when you look at that 85% that I referred to, that is the percentage of our cash flow that we utilize to pay out our dividend. The other 15% we keep on the balance sheet for future investment opportunities. And our target is between 80 and 90%. And that's largely where we've lived since the inception of our business. And certainly since we went public, we've gone from, say, 78% to roughly 85%. We do expect it to drift north up towards 90%. Now, I tell you that some others out there have payout ratios well in excess of 100%. Why is that? It means that you don't have enough cash flow to cover the dividend. And so our value proposition to investors that want to have exposure to the cannabis sector is you get a company that has very strong cash flow, that's paying a dividend, that is providing a dividend yield at the price that the stock is at, is providing a dividend yield. It's probably 600 basis points, over 600 basis points above treasuries. So you're getting paid a significant risk premium in the stock. And we're on the OTC. For those that are new to our story, we run the company to comply in all respects with New York and NASDAQ listing requirements. But like the other cannabis operators, given the segment that we're focused on, cannabis, the exchanges won't have us. So you're getting paid a dividend while we're waiting for this catalyst to uplist to New York and NASDAQ, where we could unlock the institutional investor bid for ours and all the other companies, but particularly for REITs, people understand the cash flow nature, the underlying real estate we own, and the value of the appreciating nature of the credit quality of the underlying portfolio. So it's that value unlock that I think people believe long-term will move the stock price well north. But for the meantime, while we're waiting for that catalyst, we provide people with a handsome dividend.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
yeah, was it 43 cents per share, the dividend, correct?
Correct. And we've returned nearly $7 a share since we went public, just in
Wow,
dividends.
okay.
Just in dividends.
If we get that catalyst moment, you know, besides the obvious, what does it do for you if you get listed on the NASDAQ? There's so many things it does for you.
Yes. So,
Go ahead.
first and foremost, when we talk about cannabis operators getting listed, it's where does that fit from an investor perspective? Where does that fit? Is that in healthcare? Is that in pharmaceuticals?
Right.
What bucket, what pocket does that fit? Once the investor base figures that out, they're going to be learning the cannabis business, or they'll have been tracking it. Maybe it's in the consumer segment. For us as a real estate investment trust, there's no discussion. We're in the REIT pocket. And so to the extent that there's a real estate pocket, that's where we are. And they're going to look at the underlying fundamentals of the business. They don't need to understand cannabis as well as they would if you were investing directly in an operator. What they need to understand is a real estate investment trust, which is what we are. And they need to have confidence in our ability to underwrite the sector and underwrite quality properties. And by bringing that institutional bid that will look at where we are trading on a dividend yield perspective. Now, I'd say we're low double-digit dividend yield. We're over 10% dividend yield. In the REIT sector, they're typically trading at half the yield that we are. And investors would say there's only two reasons you trade at that level. Either number one, you have a debt problem, or number two, you have a terrible portfolio and you have to cut the dividend. Well, number one, we have virtually no debt. In fact, we're in a net cash position as we sit here today, which means we have more cash than we do debt. We have $7 million of debt, $23 million of cash. Can't find another publicly traded REIT that has a better balance sheet profile than we do, an unlevered REIT. So they're going to say, okay, it's not a debt problem. Well, maybe it's this portfolio. Well, when you look at that payout ratio of 85%, we have cushion to be able to absorb inevitable issues that come up in the portfolio from time to time. And so people in the institutional space will see that and they'll say, wow, I think this is mispriced. That's my opinion. I think they'll say it's mispriced, and they'll say it should trade. Maybe they say it trades at a 9 yield or an 8 yield, wherever they think it would be, which is still a meaningful premium to the non-cannabis REIT sector. And I think they'll see that opportunity move into the stock. And we've talked about this on your show before.
Yeah.
We think in order to get a sustainable path up for any stock, you need supply to fall short of demand. It's pretty simple economics. And by getting the institutional investor involved, it drives that demand with that limited supply should provide support for an upward trajectory in the stock price, or at least that's the theory.
How's the pipeline looking? I mean, are you seeing demand amongst public and privates, or is there a difference between the two, the way that they're potentially looking at the market in terms of how they're growing with conversations that you're having?
It's picking up a little bit, and it is a little bit between the larger players and the smaller or the private players. I'll tell you what we're not seeing. What we're not seeing is this, I want to build out, I want to go. I'm not seeing 21, 22. We're not seeing this insatiable demand for growth capital. When we are seeing deals, they're typically for dispensaries, or it's a very thoughtful cultivation project that is staged in a way that makes sure that the capital isn't just being invested blindly, that there's a real strong business case for that capital to be invested. And we're just at a slower CapEx cycle. I think once we get rescheduling done, once we can get some of the states moving, right? We have Texas that gave out licenses. People are being pretty cautious there. But once people start to have more confidence around Texas, if we could ever get, and ask Michael later, we could ever get Pennsylvania to get off the schneid and get legalized. Ultimately, Florida will. So I think we're going to get back to that higher growth momentum. And I'm starting to also hear a little bit more optimism about hemp-derived THC. And if that ban really goes to an effect on a state-by-state basis, that's a real catalyst for some increase in sales. And so people are watching that.
Yeah.
But they're not jumping. I think they're appropriately being cautious.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Tom actually reported today that the Tennessee House Majority Leader had said that the biggest thing to shift his sentiment on potentially bringing cannabis to the state of Tennessee was the rescheduling initiative. That changes his stance on it completely, which is something that we've said on this show many times. I mean, probably for over the last year, that the rescheduling initiative on the federal level will change opinions of it on the state level. We've just yet to see actual implementation. But when that implementation takes place, the industry is going to start to grow and have to undergo a new capex cycle, especially in states like Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, that don't really have the infrastructure to sustain any sort of industry right now.
And I totally agree. And when you look at where the resistance comes from, whether it's the federal level or the state level, it's perception where the resistance comes from. It's sound bites, it's talking points, it's not data. And if you get this rescheduling and you have the federal government saying that this is medicine and that we should have research for medicine, it really takes away a very strong talking point. And let's not forget the Supreme Court deliberations last week. If you get a positive outcome for the plaintiff in that case, the defendant in that case, Hermani, and this industry gets another shot in the arm that the Supreme Court is saying that people aren't inherently dangerous that consume cannabis. That's another really strong talking point to go out and try to move people's sentiment both at the federal and state level. So there are a couple of real catalysts here that by summertime, let's knock wood and hope that they can show up on the show up in our registers and we could all start using it.
I don't know how you can answer this, but it's just like, you're a REIT. Have you ever had conversations with, say, like the NASDAQ? Like when I look at your non-plant touching based company, like, was there ever consideration that you could list on the NASDAQ now versus other companies in the space?
Yeah, we've been looking at it and having a robust dialogue with the exchanges since before we went public, because we wanted to go public on one of those. The trouble is with our business as a real estate investment trust, there's a provision in the Controlled Substances Act that says you can't knowingly lease to someone who is selling or in violation of Schedule I drugs. And so all of our tenants are. With rescheduling, they're still selling scheduled drugs outside of the DEA framework because they're not likely to get DEA licenses for those products. And so it's that violation of 856, which makes us break the law. One of our competitors was grandfathered on. They got lucky, and the exchange at the time utilized the Cole memo to say, okay, look, this is a get out of jail free card. When the Cole memo was rescinded, a decision was made to grandfather them. That's a real problem for us. Like, it's a crawl on my side because it's inherently not fair. But that's why we are where we are. And when I hear people talk about, well, rescheduling allows people to uplist, I think the only way that that's true is if the exchanges, for some reason, totally change their mind about Bank Secrecy Act, about anti-money laundering laws, and all of that. I think it's the salespeople that give people the hope that they'll be able to get uplisted just with the rescheduling. I personally don't see it. I want to be wrong on that because we'll be right there to submit our application for uplisting. I just don't see it happening.
I hope you're wrong, but you may have a point.
I hope I'm wrong too.
Couple questions from the crowd. Anthony, do you have any competition yet? Writes one person. And then David Benz also writes, 95% of the AFFO must be paid out, correct or right? He says, but your response to both those questions.
Yeah. So on the first one, it's fascinating. When I do some investor meetings, I say there are very few businesses that have less competition 7 years after they started, but we're one of them. We just don't see meaningful competition because we don't see new players stepping into the sector. And those that have been around don't have the access to capital we have and aren't there providing capital to the sector. So we did a couple of deals last year for Cresco, and there are very few people that can provide the type of capital that we can provide. Now, maybe you'd get local competition on a small dispensary, but a cultivation facility, I'm not aware of others that are out there. On the question, that it's of taxable income that has to be paid out, not of AFFO. And because we have amortization of because we have depreciation on all of our properties, that significantly reduces our taxable income. So by only paying out the minimum, we would be paying less. In fact, we had a disclosure back in, we put out every January, what percent of our income, what percent of our dividend is dividend income versus return of capital. And it's about 14% was return of capital. So that means that we're paying out more than what that net income requirement was. Why that's good for investors? That's good for investors because you get to reduce your basis with the return of capital. It means you're getting $100 in a dividend and you're only paying dividend tax on 86% of it. And so you're deferring tax until on that other piece that we're returning until you sell out of the stock. And if you hold it for long-term capital gains, then you're, instead of getting taxed at the dividend rate or your ordinary income rate, depending on your situation, you're getting taxed at the lower cap gains rate. Anyway, to come back to it, the reason is that tax basis is different than our AFFO, which is a measure of free cash flow.
Okay. Great question. Great answer.
Yeah,
Next
I like
question.
them.
Which Anthony would win in an arm wrestling match? Writes Tom Angel from Marijuana Moment. That's a good question.
Varrell, I'm an old guy.
He's
and
young,
he'd win
right?
at golf too, but I'll get you on a hockey rink. I might be able to beat you on a hockey rink.
I played hockey my whole life.
Oh shit. Oh, excuse me. Can't. All right. Skiing.
Skiing, I'm bad at skiing.
All right.
I'll
meet you on the hill.
I am bad at skiing unless it's a groomed blue, or I stick to the greens because my wife busted her ACL and actually had to get lifted in the toboggan down the mountain.
Ouch.
I enjoy skiing for what it is, and I take extreme caution while skiing, even though I do enjoy it. It's just
so much fun.
Jaja Page writes, does Anthony ever see NLCP increasing dividends? Probably a question you get asked by a lot of retail investors.
Yeah, we've increased so we have, I'm not going to give forward-looking statements, so I'll talk a little bit about how we think about dividends.
Smart
we have, we've raised our dividends 79% since the IPO. And in our investor presentation, we show that every year we've had an increase in our dividend. Looking forward, philosophically, where we are as a company is we want whatever we decide the dividend to be, we want it to be a level that we feel is long-term sustainable. You really don't want to go backwards on a dividend as a REIT, and some people have had to do that. It's just not good. You have to do it if you have to do it. And so that's why we guide on a payout ratio perspective. We like to be within the 80 to 90% because that's a nice, steady place to be. It shows you have cushion to absorb issues like we had with air while you're looking to re-tenant. But if we get to a place where we ever feel that our cash flow is not going to be able to sustain the dividend that we're at, then we'll consider cutting it. Or if we feel that we have a level of cash flow that we think can sustain long-term an increase in the dividend, we'll absolutely look to do that.
Okay. Great answer. No debt, over 100 million liquidity, and a fine Q4 in 2025. All in all, I think, this is stuff that you've basically educated us over the last couple of years, but it's just a smart approach, a balanced approach, and that's rare in this industry. But hopefully we get some catalyst moments here in the space here in the next little bit. But if we do, we'll make sure to have you on right away and get your reaction to it all. But always appreciate catching up, okay?
Great talking to you guys. Have a wonderful week.
Right. Thanks, AC.
Bye-bye.
Nice. I was trying to hold my laugh as for some reason your Maple Leafs are just catching strays in the
it's not my Maple Leafs.
Comments. It's your Maple Leafs. You're Canadian, so by default, your team is
it's not I'm not Canadian.
You are Canadian.
No, I'm Can-American.
But your Maple Leafs do stink.
I'm not a Maple Leafs fan. I've never been a Maple Leafs fan. I love the Red. I love the Red Wings.
He is not a Maple Leafs fan.
I worked for that organization, and after seeing it from behind the scenes, I can tell you it's even worse than what you see on ice. Like
he is a bona fide Detroit Red Wings fan.
I am.
Who, by the way, after further review, I'm very surprised that Patrick Kane was not on the U.S. squad. For
you guys won the gold medal, and I know. I love the run that Jack Hughes is making right now. That guy is living up life at his best right now.
Yep.
And who's the celebrity that he's dating?
David Benz. You're an Oilers fan? I'm sorry for that.
David Benz, you guys should have won one cup because they're looking like the Panthers. They're just out of gas.
McJesus is the Josh Allen of the NHL.
Nobody's beating Colorado this year. There's a couple other things. There's a good question. Yeah, I'm glad that he outlined the conversations about the NASDAQ listing. That was
Gretchen says that uplisting is never happening. That means it's probably going to happen.
That's right. $100 says Gretchen will not write anything positive about it. Actually, I'll give you $100, Gretchen, if you can type something really positive about the space right now and why you're optimistic about it. See if that happens. Boris, is he better? Will he be on? I know you've reached out to the team. Hopefully we'll have him on this week, correct?
I reached out. Yeah.
All right.
I reached out. We do have George Arcos on Thursday.
Okay.
And then I've got Jason and Ziad on Monday.
Right. I'm heading to Mexico on Friday for a week. Cabo. And the resort I'm staying at is nice. Very nice. You're just smiling there, not saying much. So
I've stayed down there a bunch. I like Cabo.
Gretchen is always right.
I was going to say a cartel joke, but I decided to keep it to myself.
I'm playing at Solmar.
Solmar's great.
That's a great course. That's golf on the beach.
You only get uplisting with descheduling. I will bet whatever you want that we get uplisting before descheduling.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right. We got Michael Bronstein in the background. We're going to bring him up in just a minute. But first up, a quick word from our friends over at freepouch.com. Hey, if you follow markets, trade volatile sectors like cannabis, or run a business day to day, you already know how important focus is. Headlines move fast, decisions matter, and distractions, hey, they're everywhere. And for me, if I don't stay focused, some days my days can end up like this. Oh man, I got a lot on my plate. Oh my God, I get through those emails. And I got to get that package out. Where did I leave my sunglasses? But when I pop in a free nicotine pouch, my day starts to become more focused, and it ends up like this. Hey, yeah, let's do it. Let's lock in that 67% gain. Great trade. Because listen, I don't smoke, I don't vape, I don't want anything like that in my lungs. And that's why I use Free Pouch. Free gives you control with clean nicotine delivery, ranging from 3 milligrams up to 15, depending how intense your day is. Just discreet, clean focus when you need to lock in. Check them out at freepouch.com. And right now, you can save with promo code TDR20 at checkout and save 20% on your next purchase. freepouch.com. All right, back here Monday.
Like that.
Black. You like that?
Yeah.
Back here, Trade of Black podcast. It's now time for our weekly segment, Insider's Edge, presented by the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. Let's welcome in their president, Michael Bronstein. Good to see you, sir. How was your Monday treating you?
Great to see you. I cannot complain on a beautiful Monday.
Spring feels closer. We sprung ahead. The days are just a little bit longer, and it feels a little bit better, does it not?
It's a little bit longer, possibly more arduous.
Yeah, we just need to stop messing with the clocks. Just figure.
Stop messing with the clock.
Keep them as is.
Flagged. What's going on?
Not too much. There was some big stuff that came down last week. I got a lot of heat last night. I did a video, Cannabis in 5 video about this hemp ban delay. Getting no attention, which pretty much looks like it's going to pave the way for all hemp to be banned later this year. Now,
germane. That's the word of the day. Or
so
was the word of the day last Monday.
The point I was trying to make is that, yeah, I think the ban, like something has got to change and change now. And if that means banning everything, and then maybe there's some verbiage that talks about beverages and what's regulated, what's not regulated later on down the road, 100%. I think that should be taking place now. But before we even get to that part of the conversation, based on that hearing last week, there has been some revisions on the way hemp is going to be defined. But more importantly, this ban did not get any attention whatsoever. So now what? Are we indeed looking at, yes, this is going to be nationwide ban come November, or does something else come up where you think there might be some uncertainty? What do you think, Michael?
Well, I think you have to look at what the Farm Bill did and also kind of what it is that we've gotten coming up to this point as well. Because the thing is that in terms of hemp, the Farm Bill did address areas of industrial hemp, and which were important. It did address some of the onerous testing issues that were going on. It did address some of the underlying issues that are going on across the industry. I think part of the issue is that, I think broadly intoxicating products in Congress are not thought of as quote unquote hemp products. Yeah. Right. So I also think that when you look at the hemp industry as a whole, right? You sort of have this synthetic THC industry. So there are a lot of different, parts of the hemp industry, okay, that make up broadly how we talk about hemp. And I think that all of them have differing views about what is going on, as well as sort of the implications for how language is shifted around. So I don't want to focus just on one and say, okay, well, if you look at the synthetic THC products, or you look at the THCA flower products, because hemp has a whole chain that should be discussed. I think it's important to note that the Farm Bill and this definition, you're right, it reaffirms basically what was said in the CR. There was not a vote on it. There wasn't even a vote on it. It creates two tracks, basically, of a producer design system where you only have you have an industrial hemp track, and then you have hemp grown for other purposes other than industrial hemp, which actually makes the law in the long term easier to be able to create definitions around. And it shifts from a Delta 9 to a total THC standard, which is something that USDA had, it's something that USDA had openly talked about, and also had spoken about, when the Farm Bill first passed. And then I think some of the things that really needed to be taken care of in terms of testing, the felony disqualifications on the industrial hemp track. There's no way not to look at that as a win for the industrial hemp industry. And I think that you have sort of a new violation reporting framework on this, and USDA lab accreditation. So I do think that there's different items in there to take a look at. In terms of speaking directly to the extension, I mean, we've talked about the extension language a lot here. The extension doesn't do anything other than, it doesn't create regulation, right? The extension, all it does is say, all right, well, this definition will not go into place until X date. And I think that there were some important things to take away from the hearing of what the chairman said, and also while that amendment was being offered up. One of the things that I sort of took from it that I think is important is that, the chairman basically made the point that final form product is not regulated here. It's not regulated in the Farm Bill. And that may come as a surprise to a lot of folks, I think, who have been saying for quite some time that, the Farm Bill actually, and I hear a lot of people say this in industry, we are regulated by the Farm Bill. But that's not actually the way the Farm Bill works. Yeah, that's not the way the Farm Bill works. But there are a lot of people who have said that okay, this is Farm Bill compliant hemp, right?
Yeah.
There is no final, there was no final product regulation. And I think that what you heard here in Congress pretty loudly this last week was, if you want final form regulation, that's not in the jurisdiction of this committee, and it's not in the jurisdiction of the Farm Bill. Remember, the Farm Bill is where USDA has jurisdiction.
Correct.
Right? It starts and ends where USDA has jurisdiction.
But wouldn't we? So with that though, wouldn't the caveat be, in the grand scheme of things, we would rather be governed by the USDA versus the FDA if we had to pick an agency to be setting the rules and regs for cannabis?
I would say TTB.
Well,
I would say that's where you want. I think that's where you want it. I mean, if the Farm Bill decides agriculturally how things are grown, right? There's a memorandum of understanding of TTB with FDA in there. Okay. That's probably how you're going to want to see full federal legalization of products. And that kind of creates the broadest pathway and the broadest lane too here. But I think that the fact that the Congress spoke the way that they spoke and where the amendment process went also, and I've said here, there's some cognitive dissonance between what we've read about in the industry press and what's going on in Congress about this. And there are a number of different, there are obviously a number of different discussion points that are going on around products, which I'm happy to get into. But I think that it was pretty clear from what Congress said, and in the underlying of this hearing, is that if you want regulation, it's going to have to be done through energy and commerce.
Where do you think we are January 1st in terms of the hemp industry? Just reading the tea leaves with what you're seeing right now, as the CR language is the extension is the language to amend the extension was denied. The farm bill is moving forward. We're starting to see broader conversation. Like, where do you actually think we are January 1st in the hemp industry compared to where we are right now?
Well, I think it's also to remember that with this, I think you're going to hear a lot of discussion about this saying, oh, it wasn't germane. But I also think that probably the votes weren't there to do it as well. Yeah. In terms of doing an extension. And I also think that that's the case because, you had a vote in the Senate that basically was, 76-24.
Yeah.
Right. On Paul's motion. And there were a lot of people that said at the time,
that's not even close.
Yeah. And I also want to point out that over there on the Senate side, on it, people say, well, that language was just snuck in and they had to do it to open the government up. But actually, that vote was the only vote that was taken on a piece of policy that was in there, that was in the continuing resolution. So people had a vote on it, and you didn't need that vote to open up the government or not. If Paul's motion had passed, the government would open up regardless. If Paul's motion had failed, it also would have opened. The government would have opened up regardless. So essentially, what they were doing was they were taking a vote. They were taking a vote on that. That's the way that members of Congress certainly see it. And I think that there's been a lot of political discussion coming out of that vote as to what it meant. What I do think that there's an appetite for is I think that there's not an appetite for an extension, but there is an appetite for regulation,
which is fine.
Which I think is important discussion.
Great.
It's great.
So,
I think that's a really important discussion. So
Brian, it's funny you bring this up. Brian Dabrowski writes, the hemp language gets changed in the next steps every time. You agree with that?
Well, it didn't get changed. So I remember there are folks, I think we have to be careful here because remember, there were a lot of folks who said, oh, that language is not going to be in the CR.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were folks who said, oh, by the way, that language isn't going to be this language will be changed in the Farm Bill. Now, remember, the Farm Bill created this language in the beginning in 2018.
Correct.
Okay. And then when you go back a couple of years, each time the Farm Bill was introduced, the language was more restrictive. Okay. So even on the House side where you had House Republicans, when they introduced their last base text Farm Bill language, right, you had that. And even in the Senate side, when they introduced their base text, you had similar language in their base text on the standards. There were some differences, but broadly, right, you saw a similar type of policy enacted. So I don't really know. There's really not much that I can do to explain more than that to people about what's going on in Congress. They're just going to believe what they want to believe, right? And I'm kind of telling you what's going on.
So what's Brian saying here wrong? It would have delayed the government reopening.
Well, it wouldn't have delayed the government reopening because
he's later saying, was it changed at that point in the past or on the next steps, writes Brian.
So if you go back and you look at it, this has been touched a few different ways in base text, right? And amendments. All right. So it's been touched a number of different ways. Every time Congress has had the chance to vote on this, they've made the definition more restrictive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what happened. Okay. So the question is, what does it look like going forward? Well, the Farm Bill was a place where this could have been addressed. Okay. But it wasn't. Mm-hmm. All right. The amendment wasn't even heard. Okay. Generally, if you have an amendment that folks know is going to move somewhere, or it's popular, or it's going to go, like some of the questions that you see procedurally are less of an issue.
So what are you telling members on the hemp side right now? based on what you just said. You know, like that's pretty
Focus
tough.
on regulation. Don't focus on delays.
Yeah.
Okay. Because part of the problem right now is there are a lot of people that are just lobbying on the delay, and Congress doesn't want to see, they want to see regulation. They don't want to see a delay.
And
They're
you
not interested in doing codes. They're not interested in, right now, they're not interested on voting on a delay.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants regulation. The cannabis industry wants regulation. The hemp industry wants regulation. Like, regulation is welcomed. Like that should be the focal point of the conversation, not extending the inevitable with the extension, which is kind of what they want. I mean, they want free reign to basically have the market they've capitalized on for the last 8 years now, and leave it at that. Sensible regulation is what everybody that's involved with cannabis wants for the hemp industry.
Are enough hemp companies
should want.
I see you reading down those comments. Brian's back at you again. It was not changed in committee. It was changed on the House floor. He writes now. I don't know what that
was. Right. Okay. So if you go back, it depends on what he's talking about. If he's talking about the House side, right, on it, I mean, he can go look this up about where these changes were made, because you had, all right, when you go back to the last Congress, okay, you had, everybody knows you had the Mary Miller Amendment, right? You can go look up where that change was made.
Okay.
Yeah, Gretchen's also saying that Brian's talking about the motion, not the actual.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, okay, all right.
Yeah,
that's fine. Got it. He meant on the Senate floor. Well, he said the House in the comment.
Correct.
So I can only go by what he said.
So I'd have to go that he was not correct.
Right. I mean, you're getting into, like, here's the thing. You're getting into somewhat of arcane procedure, right, when we're talking about this. That's why there's a lot of, I think that's why you see a lot of questions about what's going on. I think the 30,000 foot view here is, if we're going to be talking about something, there are things that Congress is interested in talking about. There are things that I think Congress is not interested in talking about. And there's a lot of fatigue, like just going around the hill on this issue. I can't even begin to tell you how much fatigue there is, on this issue because of how heavily lobbied it's been. And the cannabis industry and the hemp industry are not the only people that are up there lobbying on this, right? Okay. You see there's a lot of alcohol that's lobbying on this. There are a lot of different interests that are lobbying on this right now.
I bet.
I mean, there has to be greater forces at play here, because just looking at the tea leaves, you've got Ben Kovler pedal to the metal expanding his hemp or THC beverage business. You've got Kim Rivers that announced today that she is expanding her Onward drink line into a ton of states. It's funny because not the press release, but the social media post exclusively listed all of her alcohol distribution partners that are moving product. Like, there has to be a play that's being lobbied for and being backdoored in DC to ultimately prop up the beverage opportunity in these states, side saddle of, let's say, a potential outright ban that would take effect via the CR language in December.
Well, there have been discussions on beverage in DC. Here's the thing on beverage. Okay, so if you do beverage specific legislation, all right, essentially what you have to do is you probably would have to do it in energy and commerce.
Mm-hmm.
Have it passed out of that committee. You're going to need a tax on it if you want it regulated by TTB. So, like, if you look at like Morgan Griffith's bill, for example, beverage would fall under oral ingestible, right, in his bill. And the thing is that it would be regulated by FDA in the way that the bill is currently written, not TTB.
Okay.
And you want beverage over at TTB. You don't want beverage. You don't want beverage over at FDA. You want a memorandum of understanding with TTB and FDA so that it's regulated the same way that alcohol is regulated. Mm-hmm. That's what you're going for if you're on the beverage side.
I mean, that's the biggest win for the alcohol industry. If the alcohol industry can get congruency between THC beverages and the products that they have now at scale, it's a home run for them. that's the biggest win possible.
Yeah.
I would say to some in the alcohol industry, not to all.
Some.
Okay,
Some.
so the what you have is distributors are very much interested in that, and retail is interested in that.
Yeah.
I would say that the suppliers and manufacturers are, they have not been for that right now.
Yeah,
so you do see a split. You do see a split amongst the alcohol industry. It's not like, look, alcohol is a lot like cannabis and hemp in that they're divided, right?
Yeah.
Everybody talks about in the cannabis industry. People are like, well, shouldn't there just be one thing? Shouldn't this be united? And shouldn't we all just get together and do this and do that, right? But that doesn't even happen in alcohol.
Yeah.
All right. So the question is, what do you expect? What we have right now is people are all in there and they're lobbying for their specific product.
But it's not happening in alcohol because what? It's all related to the hemp and cannabis space. Because if you take away all this confusion and challenges, what are the challenges that the alcohol industry faces?
Michael's right. I mean, on the manufacturing level, they're not playing in the space right now. They can't play in the space. The only people that are playing in the space right now and have seen the economics and reap the benefits are distribution and retail, as far as the beverage opportunity is concerned.
Uh-huh.
And go, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't read too much. I think you have to watch Congress. I think the thing is that you see a lot of announcements and you see a lot of people going to conferences and a lot of folks are talking to each other. All right. The thing is when somebody, all right, it's like in basketball, when somebody's dribbling the ball, all right, and you're playing defense, watch where their body goes. Don't look at their head. Right. Don't look at the ball. Watch where the body's going. All right. And you've got to do the same thing, I think, here on Congress in order to figure out where to get to the end. I think that there's a lot of momentum, behind, a non-intoxicating CBD product. I think there's a lot of discussion around beverage, but the thing is you have to know how these things can happen, because it's not just, these aren't just state laws we're dealing with anymore. All right. Yeah. In states, you can carve out this or do this ratio or do that or whatever, right? Because you don't have to worry about the Controlled Substances Act in the same way at the state level as you do on the federal level. All right. Which is a very large gating issue relative to getting the changes that you want. Because when you look at the politics of Congress, the committees that have to deal with it and the jurisdictions that are there are multi-jurisdictional. It's not just one thing. When the amendment was done in the 2018 Farm Bill, on the Senate side, they actually, the way that it got done without having to have sign off in those committees was they actually did it from the floor in the Senate. All right. Okay. Which is how they got around that. But this time there's no way that's going to happen from the floor in the Senate.
Yeah.
Right. It actually has to work through that process. There have to be the right waivers from the right committees. There has to be a will to do that there from congressional leadership. There are 40 days left in this congressional session. Yeah. All right. It's not November. November is a date that's in the law. And when that law, all right, and I need, people have to follow along here. That law is federal law right now. It just happens to be that definition doesn't go in place until that November date.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. So it is actually federal law right now, but it just happens to be that's the date that it goes into, that definition goes into effect. So it's a very different situation that we have in front of us right now. And from a regulatory perspective, there are a lot of different bills that are out there that could do things. You've got Griffith's bill, right? Which the House basically pointed everybody over to Energy and Commerce on. And I think what you saw was, guys, like the Agriculture Committee, we are regulating the agricultural product. We're regulating USDA. You want final form product regulation? Your friends are over there. Go have a conversation over there. And I think that's pretty instructive. And the Senate's going to have their own version of the Farm Bill. Do folks think that the Senate is going to have a different definition in the underlying Farm Bill when it comes out? I think probably not. Right? Yeah. I think probably not. Will there be an amendment process where people will try to amend the Senate Farm Bill in committee during a markup? I do. I think that people will try to amend it. And we don't know what the outcome is going to be of that particular amendment. But we saw in the House where I thought it was more likely that we might see something like that happen. The House didn't hear the amendment. On the Senate side, in the Agriculture Committee, you still have Mitch McConnell on that committee. Senator Bozeman has said that he doesn't want anything controversial in the Farm Bill markup. This issue right now is considered a controversial issue in Congress, one that if it's in a bill, it could sink a bill, right? And that's the fundamental issue that we're seeing from a congressional side right now.
Mitch McConnell. I can't believe that. Any debate between two parties, you want to make progress by hearing one side of the story. You don't always want to be talking, so to speak. And whenever I have these conversations about hemp, especially people from the hemp side, I feel like it's talking to a wall sometimes. You brought up earlier about they need to focus more on regulation and not delays. Are enough companies in the hemp industry actually focusing on regulation now, or is it more just about the narrative of delay?
No. And the problem is people don't focus on regulation. They're going to run out of time, right? Because that's really the thing. All right. And Congress did not do what folks say that it did. They do not believe that they opened up a product area for THC synthetic derivatives, right? And what that market came. And we all understand what the language was in the 2018 Farm Bill. Right. They say we didn't allow for THCA flower to be shipped all across the country, right?
We did
as marijuana, right? So Congress didn't. And I think that the thing is you can read the definition and reasonably believe what you want to take from that definition that was in the 2018 Farm Bill. And people did. The problem is Congress never went that far, and they didn't believe it. All right. So the issue is now you have Congress looking at what the definition is, and looking at what it is that they want to do. And they have a thesis on this. All right. So I think Congress has acted, and the discussion really now is around regulation. I think that if folks are talking about, extend here or do this there, Congress doesn't want to perpetuate the problem that they see as having proliferated in the 2018 Farm Bill.
Correct. And the problem too is, the reason why no one's talking about regulation is because it blows up the business models. All the hemp companies are decentralized cannabis businesses. They operate with interstate commerce on a national scale, take credit cards. Like, they couldn't operate in the licensed industry right now. They could if they raised a bunch of capital and they went on a state by state shopping spree and deployed assets. But the only people that could survive a regulated market are probably any of the big boys down in Texas. Just because it's a multi-billion-dollar market, they have assets and they can operate within that one market and still make a hell of a lot of money at scale. Aside from that, the guys that are shipping nationwide would be dead in the water on any kind of sensible regulation, which is where it would go.
That's what Congress has concerns about too. That's the stuff that they have the biggest issue with. And that's
100%
one of the things when you talk in Congress, that's where it's at. And
look,
look,
if you're one of the big hemp, if you're one of the big hemp guys, why would you fight for regulation that would essentially be sealing your casket? It would make zero sense. You want the extension for 3 more years of free shit army to do whatever you want and sell your products coast to coast. It's for me, that's good business. If I'm one of the big entrepreneurial minded hemp businesses.
All right.
Brian, I know you want sensible hemp regulation, but damn well when I say outside of Texas, a lot of those businesses, maybe North Carolina, South Carolina, those businesses that are intrastate would get kneecapped the next day that you shut down interstate commerce, take away the credit cards, take away e-commerce. You're fundamentally changing their business. You're putting them in a box. Like, that is going to be very hard, and 90% of the businesses will not be able to do that, especially the guys that are inverting THCA flower and selling a bunch of just illegal drugs online right now, which is a big part of the hemp industry.
Does he have a point? Please stop the nonsense. We want sensible regulations on the hemp side.
I just said he doesn't have a point.
So here's the issue that we see on this, right? So you have some folks who are like, all right, we just want to deal with, CBD regulations, right? And I'll say non-intoxicating CBD regulations. You have folks that are approaching Congress right now saying, we don't care about anything else. Just give us the beverage and we're fine. Right. And that's where we're going to go. You have people who are approaching Congress saying that they're farmers. Okay. But they're really selling THCA across the country. All right. And then you've got folks who are selling synthetic derivative products, are kind of folding themselves behind there. And none of those groups are going to agree with each other. They're just not. So, right, like they fundamentally don't agree with each other. All right. On the beverage side, I think a lot of folks are like, all right, let's get rid of, we can get rid of the other stuff. And if I was if I was a beverage company, I would be running as far away from the THC synthetic derivative guys.
And the conversations we have, a lot of them are trying to do that.
They are.
Yeah, I mean, the synthetic derivative guys, they're importing chemicals from China, chemically converting CBD into God knows what soup at this point, and selling vapes nationwide in gas stations. That business model for them is beautiful. That business model cannot be regulated because it cannot exist unless they just descheduled everything. And to be honest, even if they descheduled everything, the HHC, THC zero, all day high vapes are gone anyway. So there's no world where what they're doing is sustainable. And unfortunately, some of those guys are the loudest guys in the room. We saw some of them in the room for the executive order on cannabis, for God's sakes.
The industry needs to split itself.
Yeah.
The way that industry broadly, we need to think about this as advocates is we need to think about, right, not those divisions. We need to think about good actors and bad actors.
Yes.
All right. Who is doing this right? Who is doing this wrong?
Correct.
Right. And that's the only way that you're going to get to sensible regulation. That's really the only way that it's going to happen. And I think that we can all argue about what that looks like, but it's hard to argue at this point in the conversation that federal legalization has got to be the way to go. Like if we're talking about creating just a lane for synthetic products, that doesn't really make sense. No. All right. And people don't want that. So you look at some of these bills and they're trying to basically write themselves into the law of what Congress doesn't want to see. And the difference between this and what's going on at the state level is that Congress is much more educated at this point than what's happened at the state level. And the states have a lot of latitude as to what they can do as the laboratories of democracy relative to cannabis and hemp laws. And that's what they've done. And they've been leading the way on this issue. If folks, and I've been watching what certain states do, there should be a push for legalization in these states. Just legalize marijuana. If this is all one thing and you want to sell intoxicating products, that's great. You should be able to do it. Let's do it under a licensed, regulated system, cannabis, hemp, or otherwise. All right. And have states set those things up. And let's push the federal government to do the right thing. Yeah.
Gretchen writes, we need to think about this as medicine or industrial. Yeah, maybe. But the big portion of
they have to be bifurcated. There is no combining the two. Unfortunately,
we're getting there. We're getting there.
We are getting there.
Look at the executive order and what the executive order did, and then look at what Congress is doing in this definition.
Correct.
Right. And so we'll see what the policy shakeout is. But if you remember in every state how we got to legalization, think about how we got to legalization in all these different states. We had medical, then we passed recreational.
Yeah.
That's what happened. All right. Right now, we're looking at some level of federal program through the EO. And I think that, federal program with research, it's going to open up a lot of other opportunities and get this, get this conversation moving.
All right, sir. I hope a week from today, I'm actually doing a podcast from the beach, sipping a pina colada, and we're talking about how rescheduling has been confirmed.
I hope you are too.
We'll cross our fingers on that one. In the meantime, we'll keep a close eye on this topic, see if it develops, and if anything materializes, then we'll probably reach out to you and get you right back on. But enjoy the week if that does not happen, and we'll see you back here next Monday.
Looking forward to it. Great to see you guys.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Always an interesting topic every single Monday. Locked In, presented by freepouch.com as well, the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. Insider's Edge here on a Monday Traded Black podcast presented by Flowhub. How about that? Getting 3 sponsors in a matter of 10 seconds.
That took some experience.
That is some serious skill, AV. Also, and speaking of some of our other sponsors, YOLO. Again, I will remind people that 47%.
Well.
We have a position, Charlotte's Web, but that's one of their positions within YOLO, and it had a heck of a week a couple weeks ago. Village Farms, High Tide, those are big holdings, and they actually, in that ETF, have the biggest OGI holding out of any cannabis ETF in the world. And I like what OGI has announced over the last couple of weeks. Decent company, great acquisition over in Europe and backed by Big Tobacco. So YOLO, to check out more, check out advisorshares.com. That wraps things up. We're trying to confirm Boris at some point later this week. Is there somebody else?
Confirmed. I got to call him when I get off the live stream. So he'll be confirmed hopefully for this week.
Oh, and as well, we're going to have Dr. Lee. Hopefully I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. Vinegar. She's from Vinegar, is it? Okay.
Vinegar.
She's from the NCCC. So we're going to have her on probably Wednesday or Thursday this week. So put that together, everyone. That is basically an agency that has an initiative of all about this whole CBD movement. And I know there's some people working behind the scenes there. I think there's some sort of capacity with Howard Kessler being involved in that as well. But there's a lot of different companies, including High Tide. I think Tilray's one, Medterra, if I'm correct, is another, Anthony. But yeah, we're going to have her on and just get her take on what is some of the regulations that need to take place here in the U.S. and how she sees this all playing out. So that is definitely going to be an interview you're going to want to lock in. We'll let you guys know whether it's Wednesday or Thursday of this week. So make sure to smash on that bell for all notifications and stay in touch with us here at TDR's Traded Black. AV, welcome back home.
Yep.
Did the little one grow while you were gone?
She's turning into a little terrorist.
Is she?
Yeah.
Just running around nonstop now?
Everywhere. She's everywhere. Throwing things. Yeah.
That's how fast it happens. That's for sure. But I'm sure mom was anxious to get home to see the little one.
Yeah.
All right. That's wrap for today. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4:00. In the meantime, enjoy your day, everyone. For AV, I'm Shad. TDR's Traded Black podcast presented by Flowhub. Enjoy your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Thanks again for watching here today. Listen, if you're getting value from us here at TDR, make sure to check us out at TDR Plus. It's our exclusive membership community. Why? Well, you'll see CEO interviews that go beyond business, showing a personal side that you won't find anywhere else, including the biggest names of the industry. Plus, you'll get insights from analysts and day traders on where the industry's headed, both short-term and long-term, and a direct chat group with our team. It's only $7 a month, just 25 cents a day, and it helps support everything we do here at TDR. If you want to join, just click the join button below and become a TDR Plus member today. And once again, a big thank you for being part of our community. So that's it for today. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.